purchased a total of 5 of the most popular cutting boards that are available on the market so we can test them all for durability, which one is the easiest to clean, and which one holds the least amount of bacteria, because we're going to cut some raw chicken on every single cutting board. We're going to give them a quick wash and then we're going to swab and see which one retained the most germs. Now, there has been so much information online talking about plastic cutting boards causing microplastics to go into our food. Now, plastic has always been my go-to just because it's so easy. I love tossing it into the dishwasher and it gets cleaned so quickly, but I wanted to explore all the other options that are on the market so we can make an informed choice as consumers. The very first cutting board that I purchased is this stainless steel one over here. It is super heavy. This is so heavy, I would be worried that if this were to fall in a toe, it would sever it. Now, I feel like plastic is the most commonly used cutting board in America, and I can understand why, because it is durable. It's a lot easier to clean and you can toss it into the dishwasher. However, we do want to be aware of the potential that these plastic cutting boards can increase our microplastic consumption. Now, when I was doing my research, I read that maple wood cutting boards are actually the best at healing themselves as well as containing germs and bacteria, and that over time, the actual real wood cutting boards do a much better job of holding up as well as not dulling your knives, but also keeping bacteria at bay. The next cutting board was a bamboo one. I feel like next to plastic, this is the second most common cutting board in homes. This is not the same as the maple wood cutting board, and although it looks similar, this is more durable. And lastly, I mean, no hate, but I can already tell you this is a no for me, but I wanted to do it for the sake of research. This is a glass cutting board, and these have become a little bit more popular in the last couple of years because, you know, you can sanitize glass. It's super easy to wipe off. But if America's Test Kitchen taught me anything, it's that glass surfaces will dull your knives so fast. Also, while I'm holding this, I am very careful to be mindful of how I even set it down. So in the way that I cook, I couldn't just toss this into the dishwasher and I couldn't just toss this into the sink. I have to be so careful and mindful. I'm going to start by placing a piece of raw chicken on every single cutting board, contaminating it with the same bacteria. And the first test I really want to do is I want to see if the food slips and slides. So this is the plastic one. This is the maple wood. This is the bamboo wood. This is the glass. I mean, and this is the stainless steel, if I can pick it up. Okay, I just want to show you also, I'm trying to pick up the stainless steel, and it's because it's so like thin, but also heavy, it's so hard to pick up like this. There we go. I'm going to get under it. Now let's test. Not too much slippage. The next test that I want to do is I want to see if the cutting boards slip and slide on my countertop when I'm cutting the chicken. This is kind of how it slides if I just give it a little bit of room. So let's see. There's definitely a little bit of sliding with the plastic. Right. Next up is the bamboo wood. A little bit of sliding around, but not too bad. We're going to cut the chicken. And this stays firm. Okay, so as I'm cutting, the bamboo wood did a better job of staying on the surface. This is the maple wood. And so let's try it cutting. Oh, this is a little bit more slidey. Next we'll do the glass. I'm surprised to say that this doesn't slide around too much, but let's actually cut it. Ooh, I don't like that. Okay, so as I'm cutting through the chicken, as soon as my knife hits the glass, it like slides on the glass like it's ice skating. It's just a weird, I feel like it's slippery. It's hard to have control over the knife, in my opinion, and the chicken slides around. So when I go down on the wooden surface, as soon as my knife hits the wood, there's like a resistance. With the glass, there's zero resistance. So not only does my chicken slide around, as soon as I'm cutting into it, like it has nothing to grip onto. And the last one is the stainless steel. As far as like sliding around on the counter, it doesn't slide around. So that's great. Now we're gonna cut the chicken. That's okay. Okay, so I'm just not a fan of like the sound that the stainless steel makes. It sounds like I'm damaging my refrigerator. Here, I just want you to hear this. And it also leaves scratches too. Okay, so just after the initial cutting experience, I can tell you that this particular plastic was not my favorite because of the sliding, but my favorite when it comes to like the ease of cutting and how it felt to cut was the maple, followed by the bamboo. My least favorite was the glass. I really hated that there was no resistance in cutting the meat, so it was literally just sliding around. And then my second least favorite was the stainless steel because I just felt like I was cutting into one of my appliances. Okay, now that I have my chicken ready for dinner, I'm gonna set that aside and we are going to wash all of our cutting boards the way that I normally would. So I washed them all in the same temperature water using the same sponge with the same amount of soap. I'm going to let them all air dry and then I'm going to do the swabbing with my test kit. I will say that washing the glass was an absolute nightmare because this was slip and sliding out of my hands and I was so scared that I would drop and break this. Okay, now that all of my cutting boards are dry, I am going to take my pre-labeled Agar dishes right here, cotton swabs that are still sealed, and I'm going to go ahead and swipe all of the cutting boards and then put the bacteria onto the plates. And I'm focusing on the middle, which is where I pretty much cut most of my chicken. So I'm going to do the middle of every area and then just swipe that bacteria on the Agar dish. Well, it's officially been a week that our Agar jars have been marinating, and to say that I'm surprised at the results is an understatement. Before I tell you which cutting board harbored the least amount of bacteria, I'm gonna tell you what I initially predicted. My prediction was that the glass would harbor the least amount of bacteria, and the reason I thought that is because the glass is such a smooth surface and it doesn't have any grooves where bacteria can potentially hide. However, I was completely wrong in my prediction. As I was checking in on my little Agar dishes throughout the week, I for sure thought that the wood cutting boards would hold the most bacteria because it's a natural wood. You're making cut marks on it, and that's a place where bacteria could potentially hide and grow. Let's just get right into it. Okay, so I'm gonna show you the very first one. Just a quick side note, I do want to say that these are all hand washed. None of these were sanitized in the dishwasher. I realized that if I were to sanitize them in the dishwasher, the results would be different, but the whole point is that you can't put wood cutting boards into the dishwasher, so it would not have been a fair test. So I just hand washed all of them to keep everything the same. So let's start out first with the cutting board that held on to the most amount of bacteria. This one surprised me the most. It was actually the plastic cutting board. I was shocked. Okay, normally I sanitize them in the dishwasher, so when they come out, I know that they're a lot cleaner than this, but when we're talking about hand washing, the amount of bacteria this had is absolutely insane. Now, the second one that held the most amount of bacteria was a shock to me. It was the glass one. I for sure thought because it's such a smooth surface that isn't porous that it would do so much better than it did. But it held the second largest amount of bacteria next to the plastic cutting board. Again, you can sanitize glass and plastic in a dishwasher, which would yield a much better result to killing bacteria. Now, the next one that did not so great was the maple cutting board. Because I thought maple is a natural wood, that it would have natural antibacterial and healing properties. However, because you cannot sanitize this in the dishwasher, it's such a negative mark for me. So plastic, glass, and maple held the largest amount of bacteria. Now, these last two are the ones that held on to the least amount of bacteria with just hand washing alone. So stainless steel, kind of a surprise, but not really. Stainless steel held on to a moderate amount of bacteria, but nowhere near as much as the first three that I had mentioned. It still held on to a good amount of bacteria, I would say, but again, stainless steel is something that I can sanitize in the dishwasher. The biggest drawback from the stainless steel to me is that it's really hard to pick up. It's super heavy, and I'm honestly concerned that if I were to drop it, I would sever a toe. Now, the winner, drum roll please, the winner, and the one that I did not see coming at all, was the bamboo cutting board. This one held on to the least amount of bacteria and it blew me away. So of course I had to do some research. Why bamboo? Why it's holding on to such a low amount of bacteria? And it turns out that the bamboo cutting boards hold on to less bacteria than glass or plastic because of the structure of the cutting board itself. Bamboo wood contains bioagents called bamboo which naturally resists bacteria, mold, and mildew. And that bioagent makes it a lot harder for bacteria to thrive on the cutting board. Also, because of the low porosity and density of the board, the bacteria isn't able to penetrate into grooves as much as it does into plastic or natural wood. Apparently, bamboo also has self-healing properties, and because of the dense fibers, it's actually able to close up some of the minor cuts in the wood on its own. And because bamboo is a lot harder than natural woods woods like maple, it's less prone to deeper cuts into the wood where bacteria can have more opportunities to thrive. Also, another surprising fact is that bamboo wood actually dries a whole lot faster than other wood or plastic type cutting boards. And I actually noticed this while I was doing my swatches. I noticed that with all of the cutting boards, the bamboo one was the one that dried the fastest. And with less moisture, there's less chance for bacteria to grow. Now, the only drawback that I personally have with the bamboo cutting board is that I can't put it into the dishwasher. Okay, so now that we know all of this information, what are the best cutting board? What are our takeaways? Personally, I still love plastic simply because I can put it in the dishwasher and disinfect it, and I know that it's safe. But if you are concerned about microplastics in your food, the best solution based on our test is the bamboo cutting board. Not only does this harbor the least amount of bacteria, also very durable, it's very inexpensive, and it's lightweight, and it's not going to shatter like glass will. Now, after learning the findings, I'm curious to know which one are you going to continue using? Let me know in the comments down below. If you have more requests of things that you'd like me to test or try out, let me know also down below. As always, thank you so much for watching, subscribing, and liking. I'll see you guys in my next one.